Hello, anyone here? So if you can hear me, just give me a little message because I'm actually doing this on my mobile. I've not actually streamed on mobile yet, so I'm not too familiar with this way of doing it, to be honest. So I'm going to try and work in partnership with my laptop to see what's going on. Obviously, on a mobile phone, I'm limited for what I can see, I think, compared with a laptop desktop. Let's take a look. Okay, so looks like I've got 2 live viewers. Problem is I can't see if anyone's actually commenting, so I'm going to try and sort that out a second. Okie dokes. So bear with me, and I'm going to start in a minute. So yeah, if you can hear me, today I've agreed with my son to do a live Warhammer painting. So I bought myself some new miniatures, and yeah, I've got the paints ready, which I'm going to go through in a minute. Obviously, painting Games Workshop models, it's probably debatable if it's classifies or qualifies as retro gaming. So that's kind of debatable. Obviously, I'm a retro gaming channel, but having said that, Warhammer has many games over the years, starting from the 80s, from the ZX Spectrum. So I think that can be argued pretty easily. So bear with me. And I'm going to attempt to see if I can find comments, if anyone's actually commenting. Okie dokes. Okay, so I've got the laptop. Up, and here we go. So yeah, so I've got 4 people watching, and what I'm going to do, if there's any questions, in fact, what I'm going to do for now is, can anybody hear me? Type this in as a message on the laptop. So yeah, I'm gonna, if you can hear this, I'm gonna be using the laptop for questions, that type of thing. But if someone can let me know if you can actually hear me before I start. Okay, so looks like I've got 5 people here, and okay, can hear you. Awesome, okie doke. So yeah, I'm not sure if you heard what I said just a minute ago, but my son recommended to me doing a live stream. So what I've done is set things up. I've bought a Warhammer 40,000 Orcs Runt Herding Gretchen kit. I've primed these in matte black. So I've got 10 of these tiny little miniatures just here, which are pretty cool, some of these. Very small, but yeah, very cool. We like these. And we've also got the character here called the Runt Herd. What I've also prepared is a very professional looking chopping board, which I'm going to be using to mix paints, that type of thing. And I've got a selection of paints just here. Now, if you're old school, thinking about getting back into the Warhammer hobby again, obviously it's very expensive. So the paint brand I use is War Paints Fanatic. So technically, they're slightly cheaper in Citadel paints, but they're in nicer bottles. These are called dropper bottles. Quite literally. Bear with me a sec. Okay, so I'm just waiting for my son. Like I was saying, he's literally suggested me doing this. So we're going to see how it goes. And I'm just literally waiting for him to appear. Like I was just saying, I've done 2 streams for this. Like I say, doing this on mobile phone is a little bit different. So, my son, if you can hear me, give us a comment and I'm going to start. Is anyone there? Okay, as soon as I hear from my son, I think I'm going to start this. Okay. Okie dokes. Okie dokes. Right, we're back. And if my son's here, can you just drop us a message just so I know it's working? Like I said, I set up 2 streams because I'm a bit stupid like that. So yeah, just drop us a message if you're here, and I'm gonna get going with this. Okay, cool. So it looks like my son is here. So, right, I'm going to go back and talk about what we're doing. So my son is recommended to do a miniature painting. So debatable whether or not this should be on the Retro Gaming channel, but it can be debated. These are old school things, obviously games, that type of thing. Okay, so I agreed with my son to do some orcs. So orcs are pretty old school Warhammer 40,000 style. Everyone's heard of orcs, probably is famous as Space Marines. So I've already put together these miniatures in some of these. For those who's not too familiar with Warhammer miniatures, they're not too big in size. The pack I bought to paint, it's got kind of half the size of a average size miniature. So what I've done is I primed these pre-doing this stream, and I've done these in prime black. The spray I've used for this and the spray I recommend, this is the Army Painter. Personally, I don't recommend Citadel products. I think they're a really greedy company, and hence why I'm not even using Citadel paints. I can't stand the thought of buying from Games Workshop. So my miniatures you can actually buy online. You can buy them in little independent shops around the country where you're likely going to get a certain percentage off. For example, I bought a packet of miniatures yesterday alongside these. The shop cost me £26. If I was to buy them in Games Workshop, it would have been £40. So the miniatures, the paints I'm using, these are War Paints Fanatic. Now, there's an old style version, or rather version 1 of War Paints. If you're tempted to buy these, if you like what you see in the video, get the Fanatic brand. These are almost version 2. The pigment is a lot better, and they're easily matchable with Citadel paints, and I don't think the Games Workshop likes that very much. So I've got all the colors here I need for orcs, that type of thing. I've got what's called a base color. So I've got an army green just here. Now in this range, these aren't technically called base colors or layer colors like you would with Citadel paints, but the way the War Paints Fanatic scheme goes, if you take a look on the bottles, you got level just there. So within this same green range, we've got a darker version of this olive green, and this one here, which is necrotic flesh, is higher. So we're going to use this one, obviously a darker green, for the base color, which is going to pretty much plaster the orc, and a lighter green color, which is going to go for highlights, that type of thing. So what I'm going to do is get on with this. I'm going to just grab myself some water, and I've got my chopping boards, which is acting as my palette, which, whatever, it works fine. So I'm going to be back in a sec. Okie dokes then. So if anyone's new here to this, we're going to need some different size paintbrushes as well. So everything's all rather DIY. So I'll just go through a few of my brushes. We got one here. Again, this is by the Army Painter, and this one is known as a dry brush. What dry brush does is you dip your brush into, say, paint, and you pretty much dry it all off, and then you just delicately slide what's left of the dry brush onto the miniature, just almost lightly touching it, and that really picks out highlights. Another good paintbrush to use for miniatures is going to be just standard brush. So this one is going to do the base paints. And then one I've actually bought today for this setup, not setup, I'm thinking just Jamie here, is a detail brush. So your detail brush is going to pick out those fine highlights. So what we're going to do first then is actually pick a miniature. Now I'm not sure if this is going to look good because it's getting a bit dark now. We've got artificial light just here for my lamp. So what I'm tempted to do just here is actually go for a smaller miniature. The reason being is because this is a pretty much a first attempt of doing this on my channel. So we're going to just paint this little dude just here, and we're going to see how it goes. So what I'm going to do is just wet my paintbrush, and what I tend to do is just pretty much dry it off, just so it's a little bit fresh. So I'm going to take my darker paint, which I'm using Army Painter War Paints Fanatic Army Green. And what I'm going to do with this is just squeeze a little drop out on the chopping board. Now, with a lot of these paints, they're pretty thick. So I tend to just take a tiny little bit of water, actually, and just mix it in just a touch, just to get the consistency just a little bit more watery, so it's not so thick. So what I'm going to do is start painting this. So obviously we need to take the skin on this. So this particular Gretchen just here I've got is pretty much topless, and also his head. So I'm going to just take off some paint, because you don't want to load up your paintbrush with too much. Otherwise, it will likely dry in the recesses, all the cracks, that type of thing of your miniature. And obviously we don't want that to happen. This is why Warhammer figures are so good, because of the fine detail going into the models. So whenever you're painting these, don't load up your paintbrush too much. Otherwise, you risk drying up all those important recesses. So what I'm going to do is just start painting it. So it is very difficult to do because this one is a small one, but I'm going to just gently apply this paint just around this little Gretchen's body. And when you're doing this, it's very easy to miss out little details. For example, this one just here is actually got a belt around its waist. So if you're painting these, just make sure you don't miss those little bits and pieces, because it's those little bits and pieces which is really going to bring things out a little later on. So this is a first for me, doing a stream on painting. And again, like I say, just don't overload your brush with paint, otherwise it does become very messy, and you don't want to put too much paint on these, especially these tiny little ones like I've got right just here. So already done part of his face, and I'm going to just get some of this moustache area just there. Now, the trouble is sometimes with Warhammer miniatures is that it's very hard to distinguish bits of the body and bits of accessories the miniatures are wearing. So it can be a little pain. So it's advisable just to study things before you're painting it. Like I found just a second ago, we've actually got a belt around this one, which is hard to see, but it's definitely got one there. Now we also need to pick out the fingers as well, because this one is actually holding some sort of handgun. So yeah, if you just joined the stream, my son actually recommended me to do one of these the other day, a live streaming. A fair few people seem to like the idea of it, so I thought, yeah, let's just go for it. So how many people here are miniature painters? I've sort of seen off and on my community posts that there's a few people there who might be coming back into the hobby. Obviously, a lot of us, especially in the 90s, was kind of Space Marine fans. Obviously, Games Workshop was fairly a new thing back then, so there's a big deal around it, I think. Now, the thing what we're not seeing at the moment is much detail, and what we're going to do is use what's called a shade for that. And what a shade does, it's almost like a water effect. You get different types of colors of shades. And for example, with this one, I'm going to be using a shade known as military shade. And like I say, it's like a water, but what that does, it goes alongside the color of the main paint color you're using, and it will go into the recesses and it really brings out details. So shades are very good to have. Uh, Obviously, you need to get the same kind of colors. And, that's another thing of its own when you're miniature painting is working out which paints work with what. And there's a lot of different colors in models. Now, obviously, after a couple of minutes, you might find paintbrushes are starting to dry out. So in that case, just give it a little wash over and just go back to it. And it's always advisable too to have a good point on the end of your paintbrush. So just to let you aware, I'm no professional. I'm just a fan of model painting. I've been doing this for years on and off, and very therapeutic stuff. So outside of videos, editing videos, retro gaming videos, this is my hobby. As well as playing guitar, I do this a lot. So there you go. Now, I'm just not sure if you can see this, but there's almost like his thumb is holding onto the trigger just here, or around the handle of the gun he's holding. So obviously it's very important to pick out those little details. Okie doke. So almost finished with this. I'm going to call this a base coat. So base coat is pretty much going to be your predominant color scheme. And obviously the main color on this one is green. Okie doke. So I've almost finished with this one now. And believe it or not, for a tiny little miniature like this one, this is literally half the size of a regular miniature. You would think it would be a lot less to paint, but actually this one is a little bit more awkward to paint because it's so small. Okie dokes. Now, it almost looks like this miniature is wearing some sort of mask, plague doctor almost. So sometimes it's useful to actually look at the box art to see what those little bits and pieces actually are, so you get an idea of colors. Okie dokes. So what I'm going to do is just leave this to dry. And afterwards, what I'm going to do is start applying a shade. So if you're new and you just joined the stream, what a shade does is it's like a water paint almost. And what it does is goes with the same color. So for this example, I'm using a green shader. And that shade goes into tiny little recesses and it picks out the details. So I'm going to leave this one there for a couple of minutes. Like I say, it's always advisable as well to look at the packaging to get an idea of what it is. So, for example, the Plague Doctor mask, which it looks like this Gretchen is wearing, could not be one of those at all. So, yeah, always useful to just check the packaging. And in fact, according to this packaging, actually the pointy part on this is actually the nose. So that's what I mean by checking the packaging, is that some things you can't see it properly, especially when you've got everything in the same color. So I'm actually going to go back and just paint the nose in of this. But yeah, from here, literally looks like a plague doctor mask this Gretchen is wearing. Okie dokes. Okay. So what I'm going to do then is go back to just waiting for this paint to dry. Okie doke. So yeah, it looks like we got 6 people watching this right now. So to be honest, if you're watching this, I'm just doing this just to test it out if people's interested in live streams for painting models. And my son recommended it, so there you go. Okie doke. So next thing we're going to do then is apply some shade. So like I say, I'm using, just a minute ago, I was using a darker green color, which is acting as the base coat for the skin of the Gretchen, which is part of the orc family. And on top of the main color, I'm going to be using the military shades, which is a wash. These are known as washes as well, shaders. So I'm literally going to just wait a couple more minutes, or at least a minute, just to wait until this one is completely dried out, because if you put shades or washes over it when it's slightly wet, it doesn't take properly and it starts almost burning away the color which I've already put on it. So you don't want to be doing that. So yeah, what I do sometimes do, if I'm waiting for something like this to dry, I'll then go on just to paint another part of the body. So for this, we've obviously got on this Gretchen, we got a couple of chunky little guns here. I'm not sure what these are called. But by the seams of it, these are going to be in a silver color. Obviously, you don't need to copy what the artwork shows you, but you know, gives you a little bit of inspiration sometimes. So for the metal work on this, is going to be a cobalt metal, which is a metallic by Warpaints Fanatic as well. So yeah, all Warpaints Fanatic, I totally recommend this brand. So again, I'm just going to take a little tiny drop of water and just mix it in with the cobalt metal just to make it a little bit smoother so it doesn't go onto the miniature too thick. So by looking at the art on this one, the whole part of the gun is pretty much going to be in silver. Now, this is where things can get a little bit tricky. So when you're doing this, just make sure you really go into detail when you're not painting over things like fingers. Very easily done. But we're using a few different brushes on this one during this stream. So it's just very important not to color over things like fingers. And like I say, that's very easily done. Okie dokes. Okay, so by the time I finish painting these guns in that cobalt metal color, it'll be time to apply the shade. So if you can see this, like I say, just don't go too thick when you're painting intricate little details. Otherwise, your little recesses will start covering over, and that's the areas which the shades and washes are going to go into. So yeah, very important you apply paint very thin on most of these that you paint. Okay, so like I say, by the time I've finished painting these guns, it'll be time to apply the shade for the orc skin. And once that shade is then down and it's dried, we can then start picking out the higher levels on his body in order to highlight things. And, you know, something else which is very easy to do as well on miniature painting is accidentally paint different areas just by accident. So it doesn't matter if you do that, you can easily just repaint over it. Okie doke, so I think that'll do for now. And okay, so we got the main coats here so far. Now his trousers are going to be black. So with blacks, if you want to highlight things like creases in trousers, that type of thing, greys work really well with blacks as a highlight. So there you go. Okay, so what I'm going to do now then is start shading the Gretchen's body. And let me tell you all about something. If you're into painting or you're thinking about it, buy yourself some of this stuff off Amazon. This is the Masters brush cleaner. And what happens over time with a paintbrush is that paint will go into this part of it, and paint will dry, and over time you'll notice that your paintbrush is becoming almost like devil horn. So this stuff is very good, and I recommend it, and it's very cheap as well. Okay, so next thing we got then is military shade. Obviously military is going to be green, and this particular shade works really well with the color I'm using on the orc. Now, like I say, with these dropper bottles by Warpaints Fanatic, as you can see, I've literally just dropped out a tiny little bit and it works really well. So again, I'm going to use this paintbrush, which I was just using, just a standard brush, and almost just push it into that shade, and that will absorb onto the brush, and then just take a little bit off. And then really, it's just a case of just... what I technically do with this is just cover it. And if you can see this, the colors of that shade is now going into those recesses of the model. And yeah, like I say, because it's a little bit dark, I'm not sure how well this is going to come out. And with these shades, it does take a good few minutes for this to dry up. Now, with normal paint, you can actually stand the miniature up and wait for it to dry. With shades, because it's so watery, you want to really leave it flat on the surface, just for those bits you painted in shades just to stick to the same place. Otherwise, they will quite literally just go over the place. So yeah, shades are a little bit tricky to begin with. So yeah, I'm going to take my advice there, and what I'm going to do now, I can start seeing the fingers because I've applied this shade. I'm going to leave this to dry and literally leave Mr. Gretchen on one side. I'm also going to shade his face as well, so I can then just leave Mr. Gretchen just to dry. Okay, cool. So from my end, I can really start seeing those little details now because I've applied this green shade. So let's see. What I'm going to do is literally just kind of prop this one up just a touch. So think about painting miniatures as almost like an operation, because it kind of feels like that sometimes. And what I'm going to do next then is, after this is dried, I'm going to obviously go to the back and rework the back. And then we got teeth as well, which is obviously going to go I'm going to be using for his teeth. This Game Master paint, and this is Ancient Bones, which works really well with Gretchens and Orcs. So very cool stuff. And alongside the guns, I'm also going to be putting a wash in that as well. And I'm going to be using what's called a shadow wash, which is going to, again, just act like the wash I've just used for the skin. And that's going to bring out the details in the gun itself. So what I'm going to do then is just prop this up with something, which can be a little bit tricky sometimes to find something, especially for miniatures this size, but there we go. So Mr. Gretchen is just having a nap a minute. And what I could actually do is, whilst we're waiting for the green shade to dry, I can actually go and start washing the guns, I suppose. So let's take a look. So I'm going to be using this brand of paint. This is a Game Master, and this is Shadow Wash. So what I'm going to do is just drop this out. I'm using all dropper bottles on this. And what I'm going to do with this one is just do what I did with the last shades for the skin. I'm going to just let this absorb onto the brush and just dab it off just a little touch. And then I can then start doing what I've just done to the skin. So, and obviously you don't want to put too much on, because what this does is literally does what it says on the bottle. It shadows things. It creates a shadow on the gun itself, so it looks a bit more 3D and you can see more details. So once that's dry, you can see all sorts of details coming out on the gun itself. So you've got little bits of screws in this and that, and you can really see it coming together at this point. So I'm not sure if anyone can see this, but Mr. Gretchen is looking pretty damn cool. So what I'm going to do is just leave this to dry and just make sure I've got a good amount of shader on those guns for it to dry, which it looks like it's drying really well. And I'm going to go and turn the lights on. Hopefully by putting my main lights on, I might get a bit more light on this. Okay, so that looks a little bit better. Yeah, not sure why I didn't put that on in the first place. So yeah, what we're going to do then is just wait for that shadow on the guns just to dry off, and we're going to leave that a couple of minutes. Okie doke. So yeah, just leave that there, and obviously don't leave your paintbrush, if you're new to painting or want to start painting, never leave your paintbrush in the water. What happens is over time it will start bending one way, the brush that is, the bristle. So yeah, avoid doing all that. Okay, so I'm using this brand, like I said a minute ago. This is Game Master. Not the best brand, but at this moment in time I don't have any Warpaint Fanatic bone paint, but this will do. This is Ancient Bones, and this is going to represent Mr. Gretchen's teeth. And what I'm going to do is just give it a couple more minutes. That's the problem with using shades in washes, is that it's very watered down paint, very, very watered down paint, and it does take a little time to need to dry. If you paint over it, it's just going to be messy. So really it's best waiting for things to dry so you can get a good finish on these things. So here we go. Excellent stuff. So really, I'm not gone anywhere. I'm just sat here waiting for this thing to dry. Literally watching paint dry. So okay, what I'm actually going to do, thinking about it, is just use some of this brush cleaner. which I recommended just a minute ago. So the best way to use this is just water down your brush just a little touch, and you literally just massage into that soap and just develop a point on the bristles. And this really works well to get paint you didn't even know you had on your paintbrush. Just makes it go away. It just gives your paintbrushes a new lease of life, really gets that point back. Okay, that will do. And if you can hear seagulls, it's I live near the coast, just near a seaside, so always hearing those seagulls. Now, some of you out there might be thinking, why do I want to paint that type of thing, you know, at my time of life? It's therapeutic. Therapeutic, and it certainly keeps you busy, keeps you sane. I've had a lot of stress in the last few years, and by doing this, it's just, yeah, it's good. It's good for your health. Let's say that. Okie dokes. So like I say, normally, if I wasn't streaming this, I'd leave it to dry anyway. So I'm not keeping anyone waiting, literally for the sake of it. I'm waiting for shades to dry on this. And yeah, they're pretty much getting there. So what I'm going to do now, because one side of the shades are dry on this, I'm then going to just turn Mr. Gretchen around and use that shadow wash on the other side of his guns. And here we go. So yeah, unfortunately, a stream like this might be a bit long-winded for such a tiny little model, but things do take time to dry up. Okay, awesome stuff. So yeah, this one's looking pretty good. I'm liking this one so far. So what I'm going to do is, that side is pretty much dry now, but I want to do the other side as well. So I'm going to take some more of my military shade and just put it on the Gretchen's back. Pardon me. Okay, so a little bit of shade there for the orcs, or rather Gretchen's skin. And yeah, just gently push that into the shade, and that absorbs onto the paintbrush, and then just dab it off just a touch. Okay, so obviously you don't want to mix the green shade in with the silver, because yeah, it's going to dry and your silver guns are going to look green. You don't want that, so be very careful when doing this. So we're going to put that into the back sort of thick and let that wash work its way into those recesses. And yeah, that's coming along really nicely. And obviously, when you're working with several different paints at once, just remember which one's which. Otherwise, you're going to be putting pink onto an area which should be black or something. Okie dokes. Looking good. Looking very good. So that's both sides done. So obviously, I need to wait for this to dry, which is his skin as well as the guns. Cool stuff, very cool, like that a lot. So what I'm going to do is just leave the Gretchen there and just make sure everything is level before leaving it to dry. Otherwise, the shades are going to run down the miniature. So always important to shade it and then leave it on a particular level, so those washes or shades actually dry up in the areas you want them to, which can be a little bit fiddly sometimes. Okie dokes. And that one's very tricky to rest busy. It's very small. So what I'm going to do is just go out for a cigarette and leave this to dry for 2 minutes. So if you're interested in watching the rest of this, like I said, I'm literally going to wait for this one to dry for 2 or 3 minutes, and I'm going to have a cigarette. I've had a very, I would say challenging, but I've had a very busy day today, just a very busy day. But here I am. I said to my son, I said to a few others, they were not on a stream, I was going to do this, and here we are. It's going pretty well. I quite like this. So literally, I've got my mobile phone acting as the camera just here, and I've got my laptop beside me where I can answer any comments, messages if anyone wants to ask any questions a minute. But like I said, I'm going to go out for a smoke. Probably end up doing some guitar lessons as well at some point during live streams. Man of many talents. Can do several things. So yeah, just as I roll my smoke, I'll just say yeah. Obviously aware this isn't a conventional retro gaming thing, but I'll say in my community post and I'll say again, obviously, this is old school, and I like old school stuff on my channel, 80s stuff. These are from the 80s. So that's how I'm going to justify this. Beck, can you see what I'm doing? When I was painting, could you see the model?
That's too small. It's very hard to see. You need to hold it closer to the camera.
Okay, so partner just said can't really see much of the model. So if anyone's watching, this is what I've done so far. It is a little bit tricky to make these out in with artificial light. Obviously, it's a little bit dark now in the UK, so I am trying. And if you can see that, the barrels on the guns, that type of thing, are becoming darker, and the skin tone as well. Things are becoming a little bit more identifiable. Muscles, that type of thing, used in the washes. Let me just get my partner a minute. She'll tell me what to do with this.
When you hold it,
Yeah.
block the backgrounds because
Oh, I see.
the whole miniature's blurred because the camera's focusing on the background. So you need to hold your hand.
I tell you what, I've got something even better. This might work. So if I put the background on it, don't know if that's gonna come out any better, but yeah, very hard to do too. Anyway, message in the comments and let me know if you can actually see what it is I'm doing, if it's very clear. Okay, so instead of going out for a ciggy, what I'm actually going to do, because I've been here yapping away like I do on my live streams, it's pretty much dried now, so I'm going to use a small detail brush and I'm going to start picking out the Gretchen's teeth. So I'm actually going to test out my new brush, which I got today, which is Army Painter branded, and got a very nice tip on this one. What I tend to do is just literally put this in my mouth and just to bring out the point. And I've done it since I was a kid, and my son does it as well, allegedly. So must run in the family. So anyways, we got teeth on this Gretchen. And like I was just saying, I'm using an Asian bone color for this. Just obviously, if you've not used a paint for some time, just give it a good shake so everything's nice and even inside. Okay, so that comes out pretty thick. So what I'm going to do is give it a very slight water down with, there you go. Now for such fine work like teeth, which are very minute little details, do not put too much on your brush. You don't want to overload it, otherwise it'll make a complete mess. So I'll just mix that up, and I've got far too much on my brush now. So if I just wash that off, and we're going to start again. So obviously the teeth on this one are very small, and this is going to be a little bit tricky to do. So let's take a look. Tiny, tiny, tiny little tip for the Asian bone. And what I'm going to do is literally leave very little on that brush of the bone color, and then just very gently go across to get the teeth. Now, sometimes with teeth and tongues can be a little bit tricky to do. So this particular one doesn't appear to have a tongue, so that's unfortunate. That's my favourite thing to paint on models is teeth and tongues, because I just think it really brings the model to life. Okie dokes. Okay, darling. Okay, now this paintbrush, which I actually bought today, is literally tearing apart in the middle, so I'm not too impressed with that. But if you can see this, the Gretchen has now got teeth. Let's see if I can... Yeah, so unfortunately, sometimes when you buy paintbrushes, a lot of the time they're okay for me, but every now and again, you'll pick one up, and it's, yeah, it could be in better condition, which is a little bit irritating. So yeah, like I was saying, for tiny little details like teeth, just a tiny, tiny bit of paint. And just like the skin, we can also use a wash for the teeth to get in between those cracks as well. Okie dokes. So things are looking pretty good. Not bad at all. Whew. So yeah, I'm not impressed with this. Here's me bigging up this brand, the Army Painter, and I've got a bad brush. The trouble is when you pick these up in shops, paintbrushes, try and go for a back one. Trouble is people will take off the little plastic sheaths on them and play with them. So that's why I always tend to go for the back. Okay. So what have we done so far? We have done the main skin color. We've done the guns, and we just done the teeth. Trousers, I'm going to leave black. These are almost going to be a leather, maybe a leather effect trousers. And I'm going to use grey to do the highlights on black. Grey and black, or rather using greys on black brings out the highlights really well. And we've also got the belt on here as well, which I painted over and I didn't mean to, but that's likely because I was talking so much earlier. The guns are silver, and I'm going to put some gold to that as well, some bronze, in fact. Okie dokes. Okay, so, yeah, in fact, next up, I'm going to put a little bit of weapon bronze. And again, this is a metallic by the War Paints Fanatic brand, which I recommend. So obviously always shake up and drop a tiny little bit onto your palette, and that's far too much. What a waste. Now, just take a tiny little bit, because what I'm about to paint in this bronze color is tiny little parts of the gun. So tiny little bit of bronze. Now just remember, with priming models, that type of thing, if you're going to be using metallic colors, then it's good to actually use a base coat of a black, like a black matte, because it brings out those colors a lot nicer. Okay. So tiny bit of bronze, weapon bronze on the gun just here, not too thick, because I don't want to obscure the screws in that thing. Obviously, too much paint on tiny little details like this will literally dry up and you won't no longer see those details. So yeah, it's going on nicely. Very good. And yes, I'm very annoyed with this paintbrush I bought today. Very annoyed. So I'm going to go back to who I called a nerd shop and make a complaint. Okie dokes. Now for golds, obviously we can shade golds too. The color I'm using for this is actually a Citadel color, which I picked up today. It's actually a wash, and it is Requiem Flesh Shade. Now the good thing with working with golds and silvers is that between them, if you color light enough, you can actually get a really interesting, almost chrome color, which yeah, works really well with some things. Okay, that's coming on really nicely. Like I say, I look at painting models sometimes. It's a strange operation. And yeah, I've been painting models on and off for a very long time. Since I was about 12 or 13, I suppose. Probably in the days when Warhammer modeling had a bit bigger following. It seemed to be a bit more out there than what it is today. Probably the prices would likely put a lot of people off, which is understandable. They are ridiculously, outrageously priced. Which is why I urge people, if you want to buy these, don't get them direct from the Games Workshop. Normally on high streets, you'll find a little shop somewhere. They'll have some on sale at a cut price. So here we go. Awesome stuff. Very, very nice. Okay, so I'm actually going to put some wash on his feet because his feet isn't really coming out too well. Now, here's a good example of using the soap, which I've been recommending, is that I've actually got some gold paint stuck on this brush, and by rubbing it into the soap, it literally cleans it all up, and hopefully I might be able to get a better point on this. Like I said, I bought this one brand new today, and the bristles are a little bit buggered. So I'll just leave that in there and create a point with it. And what I'm going to do is just leave that to dry, and then quickly do the Gretchen's fetus toes. So obviously for this, I'm going to be using military shade again. And this time, I am going to go out to have a cigarette. I've just made one about 10 minutes ago. Obviously, we got to wait for this to dry. So I'm going to just, again, let the brush absorb into the brush. And then I'm going to just go to his toes and just make sure those creases and recesses are picked out, and it's getting there. Okie dokes. Cool. Okay, looking good. Looking very good. Okay, so I'm going to leave that one in that position. That's going to be good for now, and I'm going to go out for a cigarette. Like I said, when we're doing shades and washes, just keep it in the position you want those washes or shades, either. Just keep it in that position you want them to dry in. Otherwise, your shades and washes will literally just drip all over the place and give you a really bad effect. So, okie dokes. So here we go. Very cool. So I'm going to be back in about a minute or two, and I'm going to be back. And when I come back, we're going to do the belt, I think, going around to Gretchen's body. Okie dokes, I'm going to just come back a minute. And just check on Mr. Gretchen. Like I said, if you are painting, or you are a painter, yeah, it does take a little bit of time sometimes for shades and washes to dry in. Now, I've done his teeth as well. I'm not sure if that's coming out in the video, but what I was just thinking is I can actually put a shade on his teeth just to make his teeth look a bit more yellow. Obviously, Gretchen's that type of thing. They're filthy little toad type things. So, obviously, Warhammer 40k and the entire Warhammer universe, things are a bit grim. So, What I'm going to use for this is use another wash by War Paint Fanatic, and I'm going to use one called Sepia Tone. And Sepia Tone works really well with whites and cream colours. So tiny little blob of that. And bear with me. Okay. And what I've got here is some soap left on my brush just here. So I'm just going to take this off. Now, just wait for that soap just to come off. Just a second. Okay, so everything's off. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this is use a standard brush, and I'm going to just, again, with shades, just make sure everything absorbs so your brush is loaded with the shade color. And I'm going to just brush this into the teeth very carefully so it doesn't go onto the greens. Now, from where I'm sitting right now, it's coming up pretty well. And again, I'm afraid we're going to have to wait for this one to actually dry. And obviously we want to put this in a position where it's actually going to stay and dry. But like I say, sepia tone on whites and creams come out really well. It gives you almost like a old look. Okay, so again, I'm going to leave that for a minute or two.
over the loo.
Okay, so that should do it. Shades should now be dried in. And yeah, like I said, I apologise for leaving like this, but shades can be a little bit annoying. Wait for them to dry. So what we're going to do next then is start taking a look at the belt. So around this Gretchen, he's got a little belt. It looks like some sort of actually connects to the backside. So this is where his bullets are for his guns, and obviously that goes around to the front side where the belt and the buckles are. So belts conventionally are going to be brown or black. I'm actually going to do this brown, so I'm going to just find a brown colour. I've got my browns here. So again, with the Fanatic range of war paints, I've got a few browns here, and on each side you get a little scale. So I'm going to start with Bootstrap Brown, which is a lower toned brown, and then for the highlights I'll likely be using a leather brown just to pick out the sides of the belt. So here we go. So tiny little blob, and there we go, very nice. And because this is so tiny, I'm going to be using a detail brush for this just to get. And you know what? I'm really not impressed with this detail brush at all. It's knackered. For a new brush, yeah, I'm not amused with that. So tiny little bit, because these tiny little details need tiny little brushes. So if you can see what I'm doing here, just very gently. Now, obviously, that's part of the belt, which is going to be brown. We also got a buckle there, which is going to go silver, I think. So just follow the belt around, and it's going to go over his shoulder. Okay. Now, like I say, the belt is literally going to go round to the back of the orc, where his bullets are. So I'm going to just... You know what? This brush is really driving me up the wall. It's like devil horns in here. Okay. And I should have actually coloured those bullets in just a minute ago when I was painting the metallics. So I'm going to get round to doing that again in a minute. Okie dokes. So that's the bullet belt done. These are brown. And the buckle of his belt is literally under his chin, which I'm going to paint silver. And I'm also going to put some shadow shade into that just to pick out the details. And I'm also going to use shadow paint on the belt itself, on the browns. Okie dokes. And I'm just referring back to the box art for this, these miniatures I've got. You know what? I'm actually going to paint the belt going around the top of his trousers brown as well. So a bit more brown. And yeah, when you've got paint brushes and they do this, it's not much fun to work with. Okay, so just painting brown his little pack on the side, just so I'm not sure if you can see it, but this one's actually got a little bag on the side of him like a lot of these models do. Okay, just around the other side. Cool, and there we go, almost done. Cool. Okie dokes. Okay, and just follow the belt round the back as well. See on the back of the trousers, we're going to want a bit of brown on there as well. Okay, that'll be fine for now. So that's his belt now done. And what I'm going to do next then with this one is probably use metallic. Yeah, I'm going to go for another cobalt metal for the bullets on his back. Okay, now my palette is, yeah, I'm not going to use that again. So I'm going to just squeeze out a little bit more of the cobalt metal metallic color just so I can color in his bullets on his back for his guns. Whoa. Okay, so tiny little bit, and obviously you don't want to mix these colors up even if the paint is dried, because that dried paint will become moist and then it will blend in with fresh color, so you don't want to do that. Okay, so again for this, because this is so miniature, I'm going to be using this detail brush again for this. So tiny little bit, not overloaded. And I'm going to just start painting those bullets on the back. There you go, looks okay. Cool. Okay, so that's the bullets done, and just underneath. Okie doke, so that's that done. And whilst I've got the silver, I'm also going to paint his belt buckle just here. So belt buckle is just below his chin, and it's going to be very hard for people watching this to see this, but yeah, I've just painted his belt buckle under his chin, which is now a silver. And I've also got a little part here in the center of his belt to paint as well. And let's take a look. I think, yeah, I'm going to go for a silver on that, I think, as well. Okay, cool beans. Now let's give the brush a little wash. Okay, and I'm trying to work out what it is this one's got on the top of his head. It's definitely, it's almost like, is that actually his scalp? So it looks like he's wearing, oh, I see. So actually, I should have painted the top of his head green. I thought it was actually some sort of bandana to begin with, but it's not. So what I'm going to do is go back to my army green color and just paint the top of his head. Very easy sometimes to miss little bits like that. So tiny little blob of that. And what I'm going to do for this one is actually go back to my standard brush. Whoa! So tiny little blob, and just paint in the top of his head as so. And the glasses this one is actually wearing are going to go red, I think, at the front. So yeah, a lot of is saying it's sometimes very hard to work out little bits and pieces of models that are one color sometimes. Okie dokes, yeah, that looks a little bit better. Almost like an Elton John sunglasses, almost. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I've accidentally painted over bits of black areas, which should have stayed black. So for that, I'm going to just get a little drop of Chaos Black, which is a colour, obviously. Celtic Black. Again, this is the Game Master brand, Celtic Black. I wouldn't particularly recommend this brand, but literally, if it's all you've got, anything will do. So, Game Master paint is very thick, like really thick, so it does need to be watered down a little slight. Now, I'm personally getting sick to death of this crappy so-called new brush I bought today. It keeps splitting on the ends regardless of cleaning it, so I'm going to use a different paintbrush for this. No, that one's a bit knackered as well. So yeah, I think it's going to be this one or nothing. So, tiny little bit of water. Just to mix that black in just a touch so it's not so thick. Then I'm going to go over those parts on the model which I shouldn't have painted, but accidents like that happen a lot, so and really painting with these bad brushes, it's not very helpful, I gotta say, especially with little details like this I'm doing. Yeah, I'm very annoyed about this brush I bought today for this video, but what do you do? Okay, so yeah, just gonna paint this almost sunglasses, but not area. And there's parts of his black trousers, which I've just spilt bits of green over, so that can be painted back over again. And like I said, with blacks, a good colour to use for highlighting blacks is grey. Light greys and dark greys highlights blacks pretty well. Okay, so the bandana thing, whatever is this one's wearing, it kind of stretches round to the back of his head. Okay, so that's a bit more cleaned up, and yeah, that's looking a lot better. So next thing I'm going to do is take this brush back for a refund. Okay, so next up then, I'm going to just colour his glasses in. Some sort of infrared glasses or something along those lines he's likely wearing. So we're going to start this off with a cool red. So this is the darkest of the cool red range, which Warpaints Fanatic do. And with this, I'm going to just drop tiny little bit of that out. And if only I could get a good point on this brush. Let's have a go at my older brush. It's a little bit bent and I've tried repairing it, but some brushes, they are beyond repair, so we'll see. And would you believe it, it's a bloody Sunday tomorrow, so I can't go back to get another one. Okay, so that's coming out. Now I've got a red eye, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. Now, the trouble is with eyes, that type of thing on these little miniatures, is that you need to be absolutely spot on so they're symmetrical on both sides. Obviously, if you put one thing on one side and the other one's slightly lower down, it really shows. So, yeah, painting things like this, eyes, can be a little bit annoying sometimes. Okay, looking pretty good. So what else have we got left on this little dude? So we got his fingernails, of course. So his fingernails are going to go a bone color. Yeah, I think I'm going to do them a Asian bone color like I did the teeth earlier. But yeah, it seems a little bit daft to a lot of people probably watching this, thinking, oh, why do you want to bother with his fingernails? But it's tiny little things like that which makes these miniatures look so good if you can do it. So any little details like that, don't miss, because that's what brings your miniature to life. So I'm using Game Master Asian Bones again. Like I said, I wouldn't recommend this brand, but it's literally all I've got at the moment for this colour, so it'll have to do. Okay, so, and this is a point where I've got so many colours on my chopping board. It's like, which one was it I just done? It was this one just here. So I'm going to just pick out his fingernails with a tiny little blob of bone. And just very lightly do that. And what we're going to do afterwards is actually give the fingernails a wash, and this can be very tricky getting such fine little details like this. And we got big long fingernails on the other side. And another one just there. Cool. Okay, whilst I'm here, we've done his teeth, Asian Bones color. We can actually highlight the teeth of this. So obviously I put the shade in the back, and we can actually brighten these up. I'm not sure if I want to, actually. Let's keep them that color. Something else I am going to do is brighten up the eyes just a touch. So I always say use shade. So I've got a shade for reds, which I'm going to shade in a minute. Before I actually do that, I'm going to just go back and repaint his head, because his head looks a little bit patchy. So a bit more of that green, and just paint the scalp. Cool. Okay, and there's a little finger coming through the gun part just there. Didn't get earlier on, so just very lightly touch that up with some green. Okie dokes. Cool. So I'm going to go back and use some wash on his eyes just to get the details out, just to take away that almost there isn't any identifying features there for what he's got on his head. So I'm going to use what have I got here? I've got a dark red tone which will work well with the red I'm using. So another wash. And I think I'm going to turn around, or at least clean off this palette in a minute. This is getting stupid. So little drop. And obviously just soak the bristles into that and dap it off just a touch. And then I'm going to just push down on each side of the eyes. Okay, And if any wash comes out on bits of the model you don't want it to, just dry off your brush or wash it off, and then just loosely dampen your push down on the areas you don't want that wash coming in. Like I said, the washes are very absorbent, so if they go on parts of the miniature you don't want to go on, just literally clean off your brush very quickly and just press down in the parts you don't want that wash on, and it will just dry off very, very quickly. Okay, that's looking okay for now. Now I've also got to give the belt on the back a wash, so I'm going to go back to shadow wash. And yeah, I've been streaming now. This stream has been going on for 1 hour and 27 minutes, so it's quite interesting how long these actually take. When you're painting these, time goes very quickly and you're not aware how long you're actually spending on them. So they are time consuming, but it's not a bad thing, you know, if that's your hobby. So I got my shadow wash again and just squeeze some out. And I'm going to use the standard brush for this. And obviously just let it absorb onto the brush bristles. And on the back, I'm going to just go over the belt just like this. And that's going to then bring out the details a lot nicer than what it was before. Okie dokes. So that's now drying onto the back, and I'm going to just leave that one faced on its front just so that wash can dry in place. And while that's drying on the back, I'm actually going to use a bit more of that wash to... Is that actually a red on? No, that's black. Cool. Yeah, I need to wash my palette in a minute, I think. So whilst I've still got this out for the belt, I'm actually going to just slightly shade the silver on here. And I'm also going to be using a shade known as Reikland Flesh Shade on the gold, on the bronze, which I put onto the parts of the gun. So whilst I've got it turned around for that shade or washer to dry, I may as well just shade the gold as well so it all dries whilst I've got it on the same side. So also bought this one today specifically for some different models actually I was doing, but I've got it and this is going to work fine with this. So yeah, normally I don't touch Citadel paints anymore, but with exceptions they do a couple of paints which the Fanatic range don't actually do yet. So with Citadel paints, they obviously open like this, and that's one thing I don't particularly like much. I prefer the bottles, which war paints are like. So just press down on that shade, and this Reikland Flesh Shade is very good for golds. So if you can see what I'm doing here, just lightly press down on the golds. And there we go. So it almost gives it a bit like a rusty look about it, bit of a dated look. So if any of you watch Mad Max films, the orcs with Warhammer reminds me very much of the characters in Mad Max. Same sort of scavenging type, almost steampunky-esque type look. So we're going to leave the Reikland on there to dry out, as well as the black shadow. So I'm going to just obviously leave that just there to dry for a minute. Always important to leave it, when you're shading a miniature, it's always important to leave it on the side you're painting. Don't stand it up, otherwise your washes or shades will drip and go everywhere, which don't give it a good look. Okay, so let's just clean up this a minute whilst we're waiting. And I'm also going to show you how to apply some base to this as well. So today I bought some kids PVA glue, and this stuff works really well for basing miniatures. So again, Army Painter range, I've got some stones here. Now, a lot of people like to go in their garden and pick up their own bits and pieces like this. Don't have a garden, and I can't be bothered, to be honest, so I just bought some of these stones. And at least they've been filtered out, so I'm not going to find any bugs or any creepy crawlers on this. So going to be basing it as well. And here we go. So yeah, it's all coming together really well. So I'm going to just leave that on his front side just so those can dry. And you know what, I'm going to leave them to dry. And I'm going to go and quickly wash my palette, or rather chopping board, and get myself some fresh new water. And you're not just seeing things, but it was red. I've actually just changed. I can be bothered to scrub this one off. I'll do it later. So we're just going to leave that there to dry. So check out this mess I'm making. So this is it. And obviously I can see on my laptop just there people messaging me. So if anyone wants a message and get some hints and tips, or ask something about miniature painting that you're not aware of, just let me know. But what I am going to do a minute, because we're waiting for this one to dry again, I'm also going to give my throat box a rest and go out for a smoke. I've also got some energy drink that my partner just got, so that for me. Damn, she's good. Just got me some Wham as well. I really like these. And you know what? I totally recommend this. Not that I can't afford Red Bull, but Red Bull has done this thing. And seriously, this sour cherry boost for 75 pence is the way to go. This is some tasty energy drink, I'm telling you. Yeah. So if I just bring this down a little touch, maybe you can see the model just a little bit better now. Okay, so I notice I've got viewers dropping in and out. I think a lot of people was thinking, where's retro gaming talk gone? Obviously, I'm doing this for my son. My son recommended doing this, and I don't see my son very often. I won't go into that. So where we go, and we're both model painters. I've been doing it, like I've been saying, most of my life. And as you adopt things from your parents, take on their hobbies or whatever, my son obviously got into this. He watched me painting models at a young age. So yeah, good to be a nerd and be proud to be a nerd. But obviously, just Jamie isn't much of a nerd. I say I'm actually a nerd with style. That's what I say. That's my justification for being into 80s computers and things like model painting. I think by the looks of it on my phone, actually looks a bit better if I hold it up like that. Okay, and something I'm going to do before I go out for another ciggy is actually wash his head. I just realised his head isn't washed with cameo shade. So obviously with washes, you're going to need the same color washes to get in your recesses, the same type of colors as the main color. So for example, the green, which I've done the orc, the Gretchen color, is going to need, or in my case, I'm going to use a military shade. So obviously military pretty much speaks for itself. It's a green color. So tiny little blob, and I'm going to just put a little bit of that on Mr. Gretchen's head. And I'm going to stand this one up, right? So remember, that absorbs onto the brush. Just dab it off a touch in, just gently press it on the head. And what we'll do is just slightly dry that out. And there we go. Very nice. So it's very hard to work out what the quality of this is like. No one's actually said anything on comments, so I'm not sure if people's actually bored of watching this. So I'm not sure if this is looking okay to you through my video camera. So what I'm going to do then is just leave that shade to dry. And yeah, it really doesn't help that the brush I bought today for small detail work is busted. It's very, very frustrating having to get into fine details when your brush is knackered, and it's making it very difficult to do. So I'm going to just leave that and go outside for a ciggy for a couple of minutes, and we'll be back. When I come back, probably put the base down, which I'm going to use PVA glue with, and start highlighting some things. Most of the work is done on there at this point. Main base colors is on there. Shades are pretty much applied to all the colors. So yeah, taking a look at a little bit of highlighting next.
Forgot.
I know.
What salt? colleagues talking to me. I mean, I want to do. I'm keen colleagues on one. If it's still there. No.
Well, they're asking if you can see it. If they was replacing, what can I do?
Oh, no. There's not the camera. I'll see it properly. You've got it right. Because you've got it twisted on it.
They won't say anything, so
That's right, it's open twice. Turn the camera around.
okay. I'll do what you want.
I'll show you what I mean.
Go on, you do it for me.
I'll show you what I mean. Look, people are watching it that way up.
That's already just put their food the other way round.
Well, you can't, because if you flip it on, it'll flip the angle of the camera.
It don't.
Most people, like me, most people sat like this and look.
Does that look say forward done?
Yeah.
It's very hard, isn't
Like
it?
you can see on there what I'm trying to show you. You know, like when you want the camera to focus on this,
Mm.
the camera's focus is actually on the background, not the foreground. So that means to have something behind it blocking out all
Oh,
of this.
no.
I mean, it looks better on there, but everyone else will have the same problem that I have. You've got that sat down there and it's covered by all the writings and you can see the figure.
Hang on.
You move your figure higher.
Oh, no. Sure, man. Okay, let's get on with this then. So, yeah, like I keep saying throughout this stream, painting models, it is very time consuming, especially when you're waiting for shades to dry. I just looked through my partner's camera, so what I'm going to do, since no one's actually commenting, so I assume everyone's happy with the picture you're getting, I'm going to attempt to move it anyways. Let's have a look.
Still sideways, but yeah.
Anyways, if anyone's got issues watching what I'm doing, I'm gonna just carry on the way I'm doing it because, like I say, no one's actually commenting, so I'm not sure if it's bad for you or what. But yeah. So what I'm gonna do then this time is we've done the eyes a dark red color, or his goggles a dark red color. I've put some shade on it, and this time I'm just gonna highlight them with a fairly bright red. So this is pure red again by War Paints Fanatic. So I'm going to just do a little drop of this on the chopping board, and I'm going to go for the center of his glasses stroke goggles. Okie dokes. So just to bright up the eyes just a touch. There we go. So a bit more bright. And there we go. Cool. Okay, I may as well start doing some basing now. So basing, I'm going to just put some stones on the base of this thing just to brighten it up a little bit because we're coming to near the end of this. So yeah, I bought this PVA glue today. Just standard stuff. I got this in the works, so it's like £2.50. And what I'm going to do is see if I need to actually cut the top off of this. And yeah, it's got one of these little plugs in, so I'm going to take that out. And I'm just going to drop some of this, just a little bit. Whoa, don't want that much. Oh no, damn it. All right, so what I recommend for doing this with is get a brush, but get one of those brushes that you don't use too often. In other words, just use something battered. And what I'm going to do is just start putting glue on the base. If I put Mr. Miniature there and just dip some of this in. So yeah, just very lightly, it's very hard to do this. So very lightly, just dap in the PVA around the base, and obviously make sure you don't get the glue on his feet. Otherwise, when we put stones down or grass or whatever, it's going to stick to the feet, and yeah, you obviously don't want that. So I'm just obscuring the vision a minute, but it's for the best. So obviously, if I don't cover everything in glue, when we put the stones down on this, it will show up anyway. So we just put some more glue down for that. Okie dokes. So just put that in there. Now I've completely put glue on the base. So I'm going to just open up my Army Painter stones. And the easiest way to do this, I think, is literally just keeping that open and then just dipping in like this. Now, obviously, you're going to want to just use your thumb just to brush around the sides you don't want the stones on. And then just, oh, whoa, 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 very gently just tap off. And we're just going to let that dry a minute. And it looks a bit strange because this model is so small, like really small. So I don't think I've actually ever painted a model this small. Yeah, don't think I have. So it's looking pretty good from my end. Not sure how it's coming out on camera. Okay, as we know, I squeezed far too much glue out for that, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I've got plenty of that. And PVA glue is fairly cheap to buy anyway, so. And here's one I did earlier. I've got loads of these orcs I painted. I haven't based them yet, so I'll get onto those at some point. Okay, now with using stones, that type of thing, I'm using the Army Painter stones, which I bought. You can also buy these with grass. You can partly do stones and obviously mix it up with grass, so you've got bits of grass on there. You could even buy little clumps of grass, which is little stickers where you can stick grass down, little clumps of grass, which looks pretty good. I just don't have any at the moment. So, yeah, looking pretty damn good. Pretty damn swanky. So, what have we got left to do? Just wait for a minute or two for those stones. Now, obviously, we need to highlight the belt because, yeah, the belt definitely could do with some highlighting. And I'm also going to use some shader on the other side. Just a minute ago, I used some Rakeland Flesh Shade to shade the gourds and they've come out really well. So it almost looks like a rusty type of look. So whilst I'm on the back side of this, what I'm going to do, getting stuck with glue now. This is nasty, man. So I used a brang just a minute ago, obviously, for the belt, which I used a bootstrap brang. So I'm going to highlight the sides or edges of that belt with a lighter brown color. Now, I'm not sure which one to go for at this point. I've got a couple just here. So what I'm going to do is go for a paratrooper tan color just for highlighting the belt. So obviously, just a tiny little bit of this. Okay. And we're going to need a delicate brush for this, which should in theory be the detail brush, but good God, this thing is nasty to use. It's broken. So tiny little bit, and I'm going to gently just pick out. This is incredibly difficult to do where this miniature is so small. I'm going to just try with a bad brush, very bad brush, just to pick out the areas of the belt which are pointing out. So obviously when you're highlighting things, it's always the raised areas which you highlight, so it gives it a nice lighter effect. Whereas the base color is going to remain as obviously the base of it. Okay, so that's looking good already. And on the front of it, what I'm going to do is just pick out the belt details just here. Again, using the paratrooper brang, I'm going to just delicately just pick out the edges. And also the belt around his chest, just pick out those higher areas. Now, if you can see this, you can see that the belt is looking a little bit better. It's got a dark brown on it, and obviously the higher edges of it is a lighter, paler brown, which really brings out the detail and the dimensions of it. So okay. Cool, I think that will do for now, but if you can see that, that's looking pretty damn good. Not bad. And also gonna put a bit more lighter brown on the lower parts of the belt, and yeah, this damn brush. Yeah, this brush needs definitely is going back on Monday. I'm going to say I want my money back, or I want another damn brush. Okay. Considering the quality of the brush, yeah, it's not looking too bad. It's not really my standard, to be honest, but it's good for what it is for the yeah, the crappiness of this one. So we're almost there. All I've really got to do now is just pick out the highlights on the skin. So what I'm going to do is look for a lighter skin color, which is going to be a lighter green color. Whew. Okay, let's have a little mouth wash a minute. Okay, so the main color of the skin I used earlier on was a army green color. I then used a cameo shade to get in the recesses of the skin. So my options now really are I can actually do two highlights. I'm actually going to use one. So I've got two greens just here. I can make it very bright, the skin, or just kind of bit lighter than what it is. So I'm going to use olive drab and pick out some muscles. Obviously the raised areas is good for highlights. So if I drop a blob of that and use this very bad brush I've got just here for small details apparently, what I'm going to do here is actually start working around his lips. So the lips on orcs are very good to paint because their lips areas are very raised, and it's just a case of literally just going very careful and just painting that lighter color around those raised areas. So we've also got a chin just here we can bring out with some highlighting, and we've also got the top lip as well as the corners of his mouth. Okay, so that's not looking too bad for now. We also got ears just here, which are pointing out, which can highlight. Almost gremlin ears, almost, I think. What else have we got here? So, we also got parts of his fingers. Now, his fingers around the gun definitely needs highlighting. And personally, this is one of my favorite parts of model painter, is the highlighting bit. Mouth and eyes, that type of thing. I really enjoy doing those. So all those raised muscles that I can see, I'm going to just apply little bits of this lighter green just here, as well as his fingers in those raised areas. And when this dries, you'll find it will kind of almost merge in with the other greens once it's dried. So obviously we got fingers on this side, which are all raised areas. We got a tiny little finger here squeezing around the trigger. Okay, we got some more muscle on this side. So obviously all those heightened areas are good areas for applying highlights. And of course we got his nose. Now I don't want to put too much on there. And we also got a raised area on the side of his nose, and we also got that area just there. Okay, looking good. And a bit more, we got a belly just here, which is actually poking out, if you can see this. And what I'm going to do, again, because it's poking out and it's a raised area, I'm just going to lighten all of this up. Okay. So things are looking, yeah, a lot more now, almost, yeah, more gremlin-like. And we've obviously got muscles and that type of thing on the back. And all these finger areas always need to be highlighted without a doubt. And backs of his ears. Now when you're highlighting fingers, just make sure the paint doesn't go in the recesses where your washes would go. Otherwise it will completely take away the effect of the wash. Okie dokes. There we go. Very nice. And a tiny little bit more highlight to part of his finger just here. Oh, and don't forget the side muscles. Okay, and obviously we now got the feet to highlight too, so that's going to be a little bit tricky. I wasn't thinking just now when I put the stones down, but I'm sure we can pick out those areas relatively okay without painting the stones. So here we go. Yeah, I shouldn't have done that earlier. I'm not sure what I was thinking. But anyways, that's the highlights done of the muscles and all those raised areas. And yeah, it's looking pretty nice. I quite like this one. And just to highlight his scalp just very slightly. And his nostrils. Yeah, not bad. So, I think that's it. I think, yeah. Obviously, I've got the washes to apply to the gold, which I didn't do on the other side. Now we can also highlight the golds on that because I've toned it down the brightness of the bronze with a Rakeland flesh shade. There's actually tiny little screws on those panels on the guns, and I could actually give those screws some details. For example, if I just put some silver over those screws on those gold panels, just little things like that makes details and miniatures look that much better. So what I'm going to do is we're actually going to shade Rakeland flesh shade those panels on the front side. I've already done the back, which has given that rusty effect. And we've also got the trousers to do just here. Like I've been saying throughout the video, grey paint goes very well on black for highlighting creases, that type of thing. Okay, someone's finally commented, "Hey Jamie, Warcraft Jamie, have you got models from computer games?" I do actually, Mark. I've got Fallout, also got Walking Dead. I used to have Doom as well. Cyberpunk is one I wouldn't mind. Okay, so I'm going to use the Rakeland flesh shade again for those gold parts of his gun. And once that's dried in, like I said, when you're miniature painting, it really is a case of taking your time and really being bothered to just get little details like that, just to make things look awesome. I know. You know. Okay, so yeah, Rakeland flesh shade is a very nice shade which works well on golds. If you Collect or paint models yourselves, something like Age of Sigmar, the Stormcasts, Rakeland shade, you can go through loads of that on their gold armor. So gonna just wait for that to dry a minute. Actually, I'm going to no, that should be enough. Just wait for that to dry. And technically, Mark, I've got models right here from computer games. This one, this Gretchen, he's featured in many Warhammer Games Workshop games over the years. Obviously, you've got Space Marine 2 coming out soon, and if it's anything like the first one, that was pretty much Space Marines versus Orcs, or at least for the first section of the game. So obviously, Gretchens are part of that family. I don't have any Star Wars models, but you can certainly buy Star Wars models. There's a shop down the road from me. He sells them, loads of them, in fact. But they're not particularly my thing, to be honest with. Models, I prefer Games Workshop models because you've got a lot more detail in them than you do over other models that you can buy. And, you know, models, one of my favorite series of models is Zombicide. Zombicide, you can play alone as a single player game with a game board which comes with it. Also comes with models. Great stuff, but trouble with the Zombicide model is that the detail isn't as great as these. For example, here's something else, another box set I've got, Super Dungeon Explorer. So these are clearly like an anime type style. I've started painting this one, but I get a little bit bored of it because there isn't much detail in different models compared to Games Workshop. So I don't actually have any Star Trek. I mean, you know, because I like Games Workshop in Warhammer doesn't necessarily mean I like Star Trek, because I don't. I like the first two well, not remakes, but reboot films, but watching people in a weird looking spaceship pretending to shake around if they hit something isn't too appealing. So, nah, not for me. But Star Wars, yeah, my son likes Star Wars, and Dad's does too, or me, rather. So what we're going to do is go back to those gold panels on the guns, and tell you what we can actually do is I've not actually highlighted the guns themselves. So I have got a deadly iron color just here, which is metallic. So I can put iron over parts of the gun, which I shaded earlier on, just to pick out yeah, some higher areas. So where is my detail brush, which is a mess? Here it is. So for this, I'm gonna just put some iron color over some of the higher parts of the model just there. So there on the target just there. And I'm also going to go for those gold panels where those tiny little screws are. If I just put a little drop, little blob of silver on each one of those. Hello, Rasp. So yeah, if you just joined, I've literally been on this stream for a good couple of hours. I don't know if you seen a community post last night, but yeah, I'm just literally finishing off the final touches of a Gretchen from Warhammer 40k universe. So literally don't have much of this one left to do now, but it's good you could join. And that's it. Just make sure to pick out every part of the gun. And just like the belt just now when I was highlighting that, I'm just going to highlight the bullets as well on his back. Cool. Okay, all looking good. Yeah, like I said, Rasp, I did mention it the other night. I think it was on the stream at the time when it was actually my son. He said do a live painting stream. So I thought, yeah, let's do this. And yeah, on and off for the last couple of hours. Some people have been watching, some's been coming, not realising what I'm doing, even though the thumbnail says it's painting Warhammer. You know, if you're into that type of thing, then you can watch someone paint. You can get some ideas from it. Like I said at the start of the stream we're on, it's debatable whether or not doing this type of stream is relatable to a retro gaming channel. But my argument is, yeah, you know, there's been a lot of video games, Warhammer video games over the years since the early 80s with the ZX Spectrum Game of Chaos, Games Workshop Chaos. So, yeah, I could strongly argue that, yeah, it's to do with gaming in one way or another. So that's it. I've pretty much finished. Finished it. I've pretty much done everything there, I think. So it's just a shame no one's actually telling me the quality, how this is coming out. So obviously, let's take a look. So yeah, it's just a shame that I'm looking at this right now through my camera, and it's just a shame the light isn't so great, but from my end, it does look very good. Things are picked out. And yeah, so I've highlighted everything, lighter colors, that type of thing. I mean, technically, what I could do with this one finally is just to highlight his trousers, but I'm going to just leave him like that, I think, for now. So, yeah, just to give you an idea of how small this one is, this is pretty much next to him, a standard size miniature. So the one I've been painting through this stream is very small, like half the size. And most people know how small these things are, normal size. How many have I got? I've actually got a load of these I primed earlier on. So I'm going to do each one of these throughout the early hours of the morning. I'm going to go on to the next one in a minute. And I'm going to go through all of them. So we've at least got another 24 hours of a stream to go yet. So we have literally just finished the first part of this. No, I'm only kidding, really. I spent long enough on this one. For anyone out there who paints models, you'll know how time-consuming it is, especially if you want to make a good job of models rather than just, rushing things. So, yeah, in total, if you've just joined the stream, this little model just here, this one, has literally taken me 2 hours in this stream to do, which it's interesting because normally when I'm painting, when I'm not making videos for the channel, I don't realise how long I'm actually sat in the corner for at the table painting. So yeah, I can look at this one now and think, do I have 2 hours to paint a model? Because that's how long roughly it's going to take. We're basing it, highlighting it, washing it with shaders. No problems with neighbour tonight. We've actually got sound recording equipment in here. It's got that badge mark. So this thing just here, this device, it comes complete with a stand and a microphone. And that's what the council gave us to record this arsehole's dog. So, I mean, I've never known anyone as noisy as this bloke. You know when this man is home, you can literally hear his mouth. He's got the biggest mouth around. We've heard him twice today. I'm not sure what he was doing earlier on, but it was outside of his daughter, and he was screaming his head off at someone. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? This bloke, he's clearly a wrong un, and he gets to spend time with his kids. You know, this bloke is known to the police, and I've had that pretty much confirmed by an officer. He's known to the police. He's known to social services, and you get people like me who's not known to the police, not known to anyone pretty much, just shady family court things. You can't see his kids with nothing to back anything up by what the mother says about me. It's a disgrace. This is how bad social services are. But I could ramble about that for all night long, but, you know, what do you do? Clearly, I'm a dangerous person. Clearly. So, yeah, that's it. I'm going to end the stream in a minute, and I'm going to chill out. I've also uploaded a worst Commodore 64 Ocean video today, and trust me, there's some very bad Ocean games out there on my top 10. I've not attempted it, to be honest with you, Rasp, so that'll be for a separate stream. It's like, really, this stream was pretty much dedicated. Yeah, check out the Ocean video. It's very good. Well, I'll say very bad. It's in good but bad because it's the worst Ocean games. So live computer stream, I suppose tomorrow night, Mark, if that suits you. But I do find on my live streams for Retro Talk, it normally ends up talking about music or something totally unrelated to my channel. So, yeah, you know what? I'll probably end up doing one tomorrow night anyway, but I wanted to dedicate one for this painting guide. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but there has been several viewers on here tonight throughout the last couple of hours, so obviously someone's getting something from it. Who knows? Also, whilst I'm here and you're here, I am working on a big fat video at the moment, which is all my childhood Commodore 64 games ranked. So, yeah, there's a big Commodore 64 video coming up with plenty of games you might not have heard of. Oh, thanks, Rasp. So, yeah. But anyways, I'm going to be off now, so likely be a stream tomorrow night. But until next time, stay retro.